Hello, this is Domenico with Easynomics, and this is part 3 of a paper 3 practice regarding calculations on a minimum wage model that's provided for you. This is a continuation from part 2. In part 2, which will be linked below, we made these calculations. We already went through questions A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So let's go ahead and take a look at this next set of questions. So here we have questions H, I, and J that you see here. And the purpose of this video is to practice calculating using a formula, which is percent change. So let's look at question H first. Using your answers in parts C and E, which we have already calculated in a previous video, calculate the percent change. So that's going to be the emphasis of this question, using this formula, which is often a formula that you will be using on your paper 2, paper 3 exam when making calculations. What's the change, or what's the percent change from one value to the next? So what is the percent change in unemployment that's been generated as a result of minimum wage being increased from $7.25 per hour to $10 per hour? So I want you to pause this video and think about, calculate what that would be. Pause the video now. Okay, so let's take a look. All right, this is a pretty simple question because we can see that there is no change. Here we are at $7.25 going up to $10 an hour. So we're going from here to here. And we can see at $7.25, the unemployment is the distance between these 2 points. So here we see at $7.25, this is the quantity of supply, 27.8, but there is a decrease in the quantity of demand due to firms not willing to demand labor at that higher minimum wage. It's higher than the free market equilibrium. And the distance between 27.8 and 27.6 is simply 0.2 million. We're looking at millions of workers. So there we have 0.2. And up here at $10, we see that there's no change. So it continues to be 0.2. At $10 an hour, the quantity of supply is still 27.8 million. The quantity of demand is still 27.6 million. So just to practice this, for question H, let's just practice using the formula. Percent change is looking at the final value minus the initial value divided by the initial value times 100. And in questions C and E, which we've already looked at, we can see that the initial value of unemployment is 0.2. So I'll say that the initial value is equal to 0.2 million at $7.25. And at $10 per hour, it's still the final value of unemployment is still 0.2 million. So it's clear that there's going to be no change here. But just to practice using the formula, percent change in this case would be final value of 0.2 million minus the initial value of 0.2 divided by 0.2 times 100, and that's going to show us that there's no change. So by increasing unemployment from $7.25 to $10 an hour, there's no impact on unemployment. It does not generate more unemployment in this particular case. So let's move on to question. We've done H. Let's move on to question I. Use your answers in part E and G. Calculate the percent change in unemployment generated as a result of minimum wage being increased from $10 per hour to $15 per hour. So here we're going from this $10 price floor to $15 price floor. And here we see that there's an increase in the quantity of supply going to 28.3 million, and there's a decrease in the quantity of demand decreasing to 27 million. So I want you to pause the video and calculate what would the percent change in unemployment be as we go from $10 to $15 an hour. Please pause the video now. Okay, so let's take a look. Question I. Again, we're looking at the percent change. It's going to be final minus initial divided by initial times 100. And let's be mindful what the final value is. The final value is 1.3 million. We take it up to $15 an hour. We have 1.3 million people that are unemployed due to the reduction in quantity of demand by firms that can't afford to employ people at that higher wage of $15. So here the final value is 1.3 million, and the initial value of unemployment is 0.2 that we see here, 0.2 million. So we just plug those numbers into the formula. So percent change is equal to final being 1.3 minus 0.2 divided by 0.2 times 100. And if you calculate that, that works out to a 550% increase in unemployment. So there's a dramatic increase in the unemployment generated as we go from $10 to $15 an hour. There is a study regarding this by the Congressional Budget Office looking at the effects on employment and family income by increasing federal minimum wage. And here we see that in an average week in 2025, if the minimum wage was incrementally increased to $15, it would boost the wages of 17 million workers, which is great. Those stakeholders are better off who would otherwise earn less than $15 per hour, and then another 10 million workers otherwise earning slightly more than $15 per hour might see their wages rise as well. So that was good news for those stakeholders. But 1.3 million other workers would become jobless due to firms being unable to employ workers at that higher wage. There is a 2/3 chance that the change in employment would be between about 0 and a decrease of 3.7 million workers. And the number of people with annual income below the poverty threshold would fall by 1.3 million. So you can reduce the number of people that fall below the poverty line by 1.3 million. So those are the pros and cons of raising federal minimum wage to $15. And there we see that 1.3 million workers being unemployed due to the higher minimum wage. Down here with the $10 option, it says they would have smaller effects. It would raise wages for 1.3 million workers, not as high as 17 million workers with the $15 option, who would otherwise earn less than $10 per hour. Another 2 million workers would otherwise earn slightly more than $10 per hour, might see their wages rise as well. This option would have little effect on employment in the average week of 2025 by the year 2025. So that's the idea behind this model here, showing that we're going from $7.25 per hour to $10 with having no real impact on creating more unemployment. But then we see a dramatic increase in unemployment being created when we go up to the $15 option. In this case, a 550% increase in unemployment. Okay. Now let's tackle the last question. Question J. Identify and label the area of welfare loss generated as a result of the $15 per hour price floor. So the welfare loss is going to be the lost productivity, the lost consumption of labor as a result of the government intervention. So we want to see where allocative efficiency would be maximized, and that's going to occur where supply equals demand. And we want to remember that supply is equal to marginal costs and demand is equal to marginal benefit. And in the free market, we would, in theory, achieve allocative efficiency. And allocative efficiency as a formula is achieved where the marginal benefit equals the marginal cost. So I'm going to identify that once more. So here's my supply curve. It intersects the demand curve here at a free market wage of $10 per hour and a free market quantity of supply and demanded at 27.7 million. So knowing that, I want you to pause the video and think about where would the welfare loss be as a result of the $15 price floor, the $15 minimum wage. Where would the welfare loss be and how would you shade it in or label it? Go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, so let's go ahead and identify the area of welfare loss. First, let's look at the loss producer surplus, or I should say consumer surplus, firms consuming labor. I'm going to highlight that. So what we would do is here we would have the continuation of firms able to consume labor in the free market all the way down to the free market wage. And then we would go right back up, and this would illustrate the lost consumer surplus. Firms losing the opportunity to consume labor. That's the welfare loss to those consumers, the firms consuming labor. And now let's identify households that are supplying their labor and the welfare loss generated as a result of them not being able to find employment because firms not being able to employ at the higher wage. So that area would be, we would follow the supply curve up to the free market, where supply equals demand or marginal cost equals marginal benefit, and then run back across to the free market equilibrium wage. And there we can see, maybe I should use a different color to emphasize this. This would be the lost producer surplus. Okay, so there is the welfare loss here. I can label that areas A, B, C, D, E, and F, small area F here. So for J, question J, the welfare loss would be equal to areas A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F that is labeled on the model. We can also state that at 27 million workers, this is where the quantity of supply and the quantity of demand is occurring at the minimum wage value. We can see that the marginal benefit, because that's my demand curve, is greater than the marginal cost. So at 27 million workers with the $15 price floor, we can see that the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost. So there's an under allocation of labor resources being consumed by firms. So we have the the supply of labor that's willing and able to work not being consumed by firms because firms can't afford the higher wage. And that's it for question J. If you have any questions, feel free to comment those questions below, and don't forget to subscribe and to like. Thank you so much.